takes a shotgun snap. Quick throw. Caught by Green. It is a touchdown. Adriel Jeremiah Green.
You don't live in Cleveland. You live in Cincinnati.
Hello and welcome to episode 103 of CinciNatter, the Bengals UK podcast. That, we're back down to earth with a bang, really, after the Bengals were defeated quite emphatically, 27-3 by the Baltimore Ravens yesterday. All that confidence and excitement and positivity kind of went out the window, didn't it, Nathan Palmer?
Did indeed, my son. And the start of last week's podcast, I talked about that warm glow we had from the win against the Jags. It's been a long time coming, and we were hoping to build on that, and it didn't happen, did it?
No, it didn't. And there's me thinking that warm glow was just turning the heating up for autumn. But no, it was the warm glow from victory last week. And yeah, I don't know, man. It was it was a horror show on the offensive side of the ball, but I think there were some positives on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll get into everything in a moment. But just to say, we don't have a special guest today. We thought we wouldn't have a guest because there is a lot to talk about. The crisis committee is here. You're joining us. The Bengals version of Cobra is in sitting, and we're Zach tells us not to press the panic button, but I don't know. We'll discuss all that in a few moments. We do have an episode of First and 10 to break up the wailing and gnashing of teeth. So that's something to look forward to. It's a good one, actually. So we'll have that a bit later on. Where do you want to start? This is your suggestion. Tell listeners what you put in a text to me this afternoon, Nathan.
Mate, it's unfortunate, I've got to say this, and, I don't like bringing this out, but I texted Paul earlier, I said, look, mate, for the first time this season, we've got to roll out the Wheel of Misfortune, and it came out quite a lot last year because it was a difficult year, and it was a nice way for us to sort of break down the problems that the Bengals were experiencing, and for the first time this year, the Bengals Cobra Committee is calling for it to be rolled out for the first time.
Okay, well, without further ado then, shall we, well, it's not really playing, but spin the Bengals Wheel of Misfortune.
Perfect.
Okay, well, let's spin the wheel, and we've got some subjects that we're chomping at the bit to discuss. Nathan, off air, just told me he's just devoured a Magnum, an ice cream Magnum, on the 12th of October. Mini Magnum, let's be fair.
Don't want the listeners thinking that I'm not, losing my shape with all of this stress.
But Nathan is eating ice lollies on the 12th of October, which I think is to be applauded. But anyway, let's spin this wheel.
Have you given the wheel a bit of a digital transformation?
I have. See, I think that's quite cute, but by about the third or fourth one, I think that might be quite annoying. But, well, now, it's landed on AJ Green. How about that?
It's hard to know at the start of AJ. I mean, every week on the podcast, we've had a chat about him, and when the season started off, I think the first game of the season, he was all right. And then the games after that, it was a bit iffy, and he just felt like he was not 100%. He's missing a few catches, dropping a few balls, and the chemistry just wasn't there with Joe Burrow. And I thought he'd come good. I really felt he obviously had some rust. He didn't play last year. His season before that was cut short. And you have to give AJ the benefit. He's been that good. He's been the consummate professional for a long time. And yesterday was really, really bad. On the interception, he just looked like he was jogging. he didn't look like he hasn't got the speed, he hasn't got the energy, and I don't know, his body language just looks a bit defeatist. And I don't know whether he's been playing hurt. That's my only explanation, or he's got a problem with the coaches. I don't know, but to me, what we've seen so far from him, you're 6 games into the season or 5 games into the season, whatever it is, and he looks a bit shot, to be honest. He just looks completely and utterly lethargic.
Yeah. That interception was really weird. I mean, it was a poor throw from Joe Burrow, and I'm sure one of the categories on our Bengals Wheel of Misfortune will be Joe Burrow at some point, but it was a terrible throw. But he just didn't seem to sort of locate the ball in the end. Fair enough, it was, he wasn't expecting it to sort of balloon over his head, I don't think. But I think it was the attempt to tackle the interceptor that had lots of people talking, really, wasn't it? I mean, as you say, he kind of ran back and then just ran in a completely different direction. It was very strange. It was really weird.
You could tell he was really trying to not get hit on a blindside block. I think that's what he was sort of a bit concerned about. But after that play, I think that was him. He was out of the game. I think they had listed him as a doubtful with a hamstring or a quad or something like that. And that was the end of him. And obviously that tweet, and I wouldn't read too much into it, but that tweet out there with the lip reading things, which some people interpreted as him saying he thinks that something along the lines of, if they don't throw it to me, then why don't they just trade me or something like that. But not the greatest sight from a guy that's a captain of the team. You've got to remember that. A veteran leader in the locker room. He sat there on his own, clearly not happy. And obviously, I don't know what else is on your Wheel of Fortune, but in the same week with Carlos Dunlap and the sort of shenanigans that's going on there, it's just not what you want to see from 2 veteran leaders on the team with that sort of body language and stuff like that. So for me, it's a real concern when you start seeing that from leaders on the team.
So I think we said this when Andy Dalton was on his way out. It's always very difficult to kind of phase out established veterans that have been playing for a team for like almost a decade. Someone who, in AJ's case, has been absolutely brilliant and borderline, Hall of Fame up until about a year and a half ago. It's very difficult to know if they're not performing as they were. You've got their egos to manage. You've got to try and do it lightly and with balance and be open with communication. That didn't seem to be the case with Carlos Dunlap last week, although Carlos played quite well yesterday, I thought. But AJ, yeah, it's worrying. I'm not sure. When I first saw the video, I wasn't seeing what everyone else was seeing in terms of the trade me thing. In fact, I really love... Have you ever seen those sort of amusing overdubs that some guy... What they call...
the bad lip reading.
The bad lip reading. I think someone should do that, because I think I could have sworn he was ordering a pizza, to be honest with you. It could have been anything, really. So, I don't know, but yeah.
Geezer was trying to get 2 for 1 on large pizzas from Domino's, wasn't he?
Exactly. And I wouldn't blame him, really. We need all the sustenance that we can get in these hard times. But, yeah, I mean, who knows? It was a bit mysterious the way he went out of the game, because obviously we had the injury to DJ Reader, which don't think it's been confirmed as a season ender, but certainly all the reports out there saying that he's done his quad in and he's out for the season, which is desperately... Anyway, we'll come on to that later. And then AJ went out with a hamstring. And I think you've been saying it on the podcast that, perhaps he hasn't quite recovered from the hamstring. Perhaps he's still feeling it a little bit. Perhaps he's still very wary about it. Perhaps he's not going full go because of that niggling doubt in the back of his mind. But yeah, certainly, I mean, he's not getting open. And subsequently, people like Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins have been getting open more. So it's the same with Dunlap. Dunlap's not been playing brilliantly this season, and Carl Lawson has been playing better. So it's not rocket science to suggest that his snaps should kind of decrease. Again, it's just the way you do it, I think.
It's difficult for Zach Taylor, isn't it? Because you inherit this team, and as you mentioned before, you've got these veteran leaders on the team that have been here for 10 years and been fantastic players. Carlos Dunlap, AJ Green, two of the best players the Bengals have had ever. Really fantastic players. And it's hard, isn't it? You're a young head coach. The team's struggling. It's not playing well. Usually you'd rely on these guys. Certainly you've given AJ Green the franchise tag. That's a lot of money. It suggests he's a top player and he should be given that amount of playing time. Carlos Dunlap, not too recently, signed an extension, again, at big money. So again, you'd expect him to contribute. And they're not. I mean, in Carlos Dunlap's case, I wouldn't say he's not contributing. I think, as you said, he's just been outplayed a bit by Carl Lawson. I know he had a sack yesterday, Dunlap. I think he only had one tackle and played okay. Nothing to shout about. But it is difficult because you've got these guys. They're known as being team leaders and Pro Bowl caliber players because they're damn good. And you get a young guy like Zach Taylor that comes in. It's not the team's not winning games. They're not getting the reps they're used to. And it does just sort of boil up into a bit of a difficult and sticky situation. You've got young guys like T. Higgins at the moment, who's completely outplaying AJ. You've got Lawson, who's not young, but has always struggled to stay on the field and is on the field at the moment. He's playing fairly well. So it does definitely brew up as a difficult situation for Zach Taylor to deal with as a young head coach who is struggling at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And, for Dunlap to come out and say that he wasn't spoken to, he found out about his demotion by something on a clipboard or something, on a wall chart or whatever it might have been. It sort of goes
unprofessional, that, wasn't it?
Unprofessional. I mean, I don't think anybody is arguing that if Lawson's playing better than Dunlap, then Lawson deserves to play more, right? But it's just the way you do it. And for someone who, I like Zach personally, and he's been on this podcast, and he's been brilliant with us and the UK fans, but he's always preached open communication, and that didn't seem like open communication. And when you add the Andy Dalton incident, I guess you'd call it, back last year, again, that sort of goes against his open communication mantra. So, I don't know, it's very difficult, but we'll see. I still hope AJ comes good. I hope he's now got a huge chip on his shoulder, and goodness, we need him. Let's get on to our next...
What do you, just quickly to finish on the AJ subject, what do you see as his future at the Bengals this year? Do you think he comes back? Do you think he plays anymore? How do you see that shaping out? Do you think it's going to be another situation where he sort of nurses this hamstring for a fair whack of time? Or
well, the trouble is, at this moment in time, I don't see him playing for the Bengals next year. So ideally, he wants to put himself in the shop window, but also not get himself more injured. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a standoff. I hope not, because you don't want, as we say, a player that we love and a player who has been absolutely brilliant for us to leave the club on really acrimonious terms. Do you know what I mean? You want it to be a fairly smooth parting of the ways,
Yeah.
But at this moment, with everything going on, and there's lots of conspiracy theories out there as well, not just on AJ Green, about everything. I don't know, man. I just hope it doesn't come to him sort of almost like either refusing to play, or I'm not quite sure whether he'd do that. I'm sure he wouldn't do that. But Zach came out last night and kind of said, look, he's been really positive, and we'll hear more. We're recording this on the Monday, so Zach's Monday press conference will be coming up soon, so there'll be lots of chat about and questions about AJ Green, I would have thought. But yeah, it seems to be a bit of a sticky situation, and there's a few of the veterans that are bubbling up a little bit at the moment. But as I say, I think it's a really difficult situation, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's like Geno Atkins yesterday. First game back, didn't have a fantastic game. Didn't notice him too much. I don't think he had a tackle.
Well, he only played 19 snaps yesterday, so they were obviously easing him back in. So
yeah, fair play. I agree with you completely on AJ. I think he's going to struggle big time next season at the rate he's going to get offered any sort of money. I mean, he wanted a long-term deal from the Bengals. They were reluctant to give it to him, which now, in hindsight, looks like a fantastic piece of business to just give him a one-year franchise tag to see what they've got with him. And obviously, so far, it's not been what we would have wanted. But he's going to need to, exactly like you said, put something on tape. Because if you go into this offseason with nothing more from him or limited, a couple 50 yards here, 30 yards there, I'm not sure what team's going to pay him anywhere near where what he would imagine that he's worth at 33 without any real substance for nearly 3 years. So it's going to be a very, very tough market for him. There's a lot of young wide receivers out there. People will be looking to the draft. There's a lot of good players coming through from there. I'm just not sure how much money you're going to want to give a 33-year-old AJ Green who's injury prone and hasn't put anything on the field. So you'd imagine he'd be desperate to come back and play and prove, and as you said, with a chip on his shoulder. But I don't know. It's a very tricky one.
I'm drafting a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds next year, but we'll get onto that later in the year, I think. Let's spin that wheel again, shall we?
It sounds like a bit of a rave that's gone wrong.
Yeah, it's like a rave that's petered out at about 6 o'clock in the morning when everybody's hit the floor. Our next subject on the Bengals Wheel of Misfortune is Zach Taylor.
Cool, blimey.
Do you want me to start or you to start?
Oh.
I'll start.
It's like a chess game.
A poison chalice. I'll pass you the chalice of poisonness and drink from thy chalice. I'm worried, I have to say. I'm a big fan of Zach, and I really like him as a guy, and I like what he's brought to the Bengals in terms of openness and energy. But I'm starting to worry. The thing that disappointed me most about yesterday's game, I think, was the game planning. Last week, I'm sure everyone out there listens to and watches all the press conferences leading up to the game and whatnot. And all the questions to Joe Burrow and Zach were about, is it Wink Martindale? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Old Winker, the old Winker.
He's got to be a coach prospect, that geezer. What he's getting at.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I know he's a bit older, but he's doing a fantastic job there.
Yeah, and he has done for several years now, hasn't he? I think all the talk was about blitzes. All the questions were, how are you going to handle the Ravens blitzes? Do you think they'll blitz often? Yes. Do you think it'll be a problem? Well, we'll figure it out. We'll have a game plan going in. The Ravens had 7 sacks yesterday, and they didn't figure it out right from the very start. Strangely, I think our Andrew Dockerell shared with us a tweet saying that 5 different cornerbacks recorded sacks yesterday for the Ravens, which is an extraordinary thing. I've never read that before. But they were just flying off the edges. We just couldn't handle the blitzes. And it wasn't just like, for a half and then we went into the half and made adjustments. It was all throughout the game. And then after the game, Zach Taylor spoke about, they do a fantastic job with 0 blitzes and slot blitzes and corner blitzes, etc., etc. And it's like, well, okay, so they did, and they will do, because that's their kind of modus operandi on defense, and yet you did nothing to stop it. Now that's probably a bit unfair. I'm sure they did try to do some things to stop it, but the problem is, if you go empty backfield and spread the wide receivers out, you're thinning an already pretty poor protection scheme right there, and your quarterback is basically a sitting duck, really. If you haven't got the offensive line to cope with the pass rush, which we saw that they kind of haven't or didn't yesterday, and then add in the fact that you've got some creative blitz concepts going on with cornerbacks and all kinds of things coming at you, it's very difficult. I mean, the Ravens are a really good team. They're a top 5 NFL team. So I think we all expected the Bengals to lose yesterday. But I think we expected them to be prepared, and we expected them to make a game of it. And they really didn't. And I've had little rumblings about the fact that the game planning is a bit off, it feels to me. The offense has been really slow to start, against San Diego. Did okay in Cleveland. Again in Philadelphia. And what game am I missing? And obviously yesterday. So we played 5 games, haven't we?
Yeah.
So not San Diego. Los Angeles. Still call them San Diego. Los Angeles, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. And who am I missing?
Jags.
And the Jags, sorry, yeah. Even against the Jags that we won, we started off really, really slowly. So I'm a bit worried about the game planning. There didn't seem to be much going on in terms of adjustments yesterday. He obviously likes this spread offense to keep Joe Burrow nice and comfortable, because that's obviously what he ran in college predominantly. But if your offensive line can't handle the rush, it might be worth going back to some good old-fashioned max protect stuff. A couple of tight ends in there. Gio in the backfield more, who yesterday did fantastically well on one blitz I saw. But the fact is, there's not really any protection back there for any sort of blitzes. And now teams know how to kind of knack us. And you use that spread offense as almost like a splash play here and there to keep... To kind of get the defense off balance, but we were using it hell of a lot yesterday, and the Ravens just weren't buying it. In fact, they were kind of saying, well, yeah, you give us the spread offense, that's going to leave us so many gaps to come in and blitz your quarterback. And by the end, Joe didn't really have much of a chance, and he certainly didn't play that well yesterday. So I'm worried about Zach. He seems to be sort of, again, trying to fit square pegs into round holes. It's like, I'm going to do this without really acknowledging that the personnel that he has at his disposal isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. My concern is that he's losing the locker room. And I think when you've had this is no fault of his own, but the season that Marvin left, the back end of that season, the start of it was fantastic. We were playoff bound. It looked very, very good. We were all running around in the brew house in Highbury when they beat the Buccaneers, and everything seemed quite good. But the back end of that season was shocking, and all the air went out of the team. It was the end of Marvin. And the back end of that season, then last season where we were very, very poor, and now into this season, I just think it takes its toll. When you're starting to see bubbles with things like AJ Green, Carlos Dunlap, Mackenzie Alexander was having a row apparently with some coach, which I'm sure is normal, and I don't want to blow that out of all proportion, but you're still hearing it come up. And I just start to question whether there's people in the locker room that are starting to say, we've been listening to this guy now for a season and a half. He's been here for 21 games. We've won 3 games, all against pretty bad teams. Cleveland last year were poor. Jacksonville this year are poor. And the other win was who was it the season before, son?
Jets.
The Jets, exactly. Another poor team. So you're not exactly looking at those games thinking to yourself, this is quite exciting here. We're playing good football. We're not playing good football. And I think that's epitomised yesterday in that game against the Ravens. No one expects us to go in there and win it. If we could have kept that close, people would have been buzzing. But it was really embarrassing. And that game, when they went up, I think it was up 10 very, very quickly, and then up 17. You're like, well, that's us done, really. We're not going to come back and hang 24-30 on the Ravens on the road. And like you said, it's the preparation, it's the game planning, it's the execution. It's just not there. And if you're talking about the locker room and some of the guys there that have been there a while that are listening to Zach Taylor and they're trying to sort of absorb and take on board what he's preaching, when you keep losing and you also, not just that you lose, it doesn't look good. And people in that locker room will be starting to question, why are we listening to him? Why is Jim Turner still here? Joe Burrow will sit there and say, I've come into this team, our best quarterback prospect in 10 years. I've been sacked 22 times, which is a league high through 5 games. Now, Joe Burrow doesn't lose games. He's not used to losing. He won in high school. He won in college. He won a national championship. He went 15-0 in his college career last year. Won a national championship. Won the Heisman. Won it all. Smoking cigars and loving it. And he is not going to be out. And no one's going to be happy that they're losing games at the moment. But he, of all people, the leader of that team, first year captain, he is not going to be happy they're losing games. And he's not going to be happy that he's taken an absolute beating back there. And you just wonder whether or not, at this point, it starts to get a little bit dicey, because you've got the Colts next week, and if we lose that, you can almost write the season. If you go 1-4-1, you can kind of say, look, we're probably not going to do much this year, which, again, people might have thought, well, we're not really expecting to go to the playoffs this year. You need to see promise. You need to see good game plans, exciting plays. You need to see the Bengals really, like Zach Taylor, getting more out of this team than is there. Really, I think that's the showing key. There's a unity there. And we're just not seeing it, I don't think. And there's been too many games that we've not just lost, but they've been horrible. There's too many times we've brought out this Wheel of Misfortune. And I think that's my concern, is he losing the locker room here?
I do think you made a good point. I think we made it last week. The coaching staff, I'm talking offensively here at the moment. I actually think the Bengals will finish sort of below mid-table. I don't think they're going to be rock bottom this year. I think they will win 4 more games at least, I think, this year. But anyway, you look at what Brian Flores is doing in Miami, and Miami arguably have got a worse roster than we have, and he's getting the best out of those players. Now, whether it's by scheme, motivation, mixture of both, whatever. Zach doesn't seem to be doing that. And certainly someone like Jim Turner is not doing that. But Zach, there's question mark. I mean, I want Zach to succeed. I really do, because I really like the guy. And it would please me no end. It would make me very happy if Zach turned this around. But yeah, the fear is that he's not getting the best out of his players. But we'll have to wait and see. I think
that's such a good point on Brian Flores, because last season Miami literally traded the whole team away. They traded their tackle away. They traded just about anything they had. The safety to the Steelers, Fitzpatrick. They literally rolled him with a 36-7-year-old Ryan Fitzpatrick journeyman. I think they had Josh Rosen in there at points. It was a mess, and they won more games than us. They beat us. And this season, they're hanging 40 up on the 49ers. And I know the 49ers got injuries, but they beat the Jags. They're still rolling, and they've really not got a lot there. And I think that's a really good point. He's a young coach. He's trying to win some games, and he's getting more out of a worse team. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I agree. Jim Turner can bugger off, though, immediately, quite honestly. But there we go. Let's go back to the Wheel of Misfortune. Is it getting annoying?
No,
yet,
I'm quite enjoying it.
You're quite enjoying it.
It's tone, yeah, loving it.
Okay, the next subject up for discussion is the defense. Now, if I was saying earlier that I was worried about the offensive game planning and execution, we should also mention something that Andrew Dockerell also said in a group chat earlier, that it wasn't just... Actually, no, we'll save that, because I think the offensive line is also another subject. We're picking all the good ones tonight, listeners. But no, the defense. If the offense didn't feel particularly prepared yesterday, or didn't put together a good game plan, I thought the defense did yesterday. Now, obviously, they scored 27 points, the Ravens, but we managed to hold them to below 30 points for the first time this season. Lamar Jackson, who's been an absolute machine, he had 2 carries for 3 yards. Mark Ingram had 11 carries for 57 yards. Lamar Jackson was 19 of 37 for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. So they weren't firing on all cylinders, and I have to say, bar that first quarter and a half, I'd say, where the Ravens were kind of like, they were 17-0 up at half-time, so it was kind of game over. But apart from Mark Andrews, who was sort of abusing Von Bell pretty much on every snap. Early doors, they did make adjustments. They had some really interesting little blitz packages of themselves. Darius Phillips was on the line and kind of almost spying Lamar Jackson himself and kind of blitzing off the edge and constantly making plays. Jesse Bates was great in the secondary. Again, the linebackers looked solid and they were making good tackles, and Logan Wilson had another interception. He really should have had another, and AGG should have had an interception as well. But I thought it's weird to say the defense played well when your team loses 27-3, but I think they did. And, I was absolutely terrified coming out of half-time. It was 17-0. The Ravens get the ball back first, and you kind of thought, well, this is kind of game over. But they stopped them 2 or 3 times in that third quarter and gave the offense a chance to get back into it, which they just could not do. So I take my hats off to Anaruma. I really do. I thought he called a really good game yesterday. There was a few splash plays early doors. There was that kind of end-around style reverse to Duvernay that went for a big chunk. Pretty much, was it the first play of the game or the second play or something like that?
When I saw that play, I was like, "Here we go."
Yeah,
I was like, "This is going to be a hell of a long day," because that's what the Ravens love to do: the misdirections, the end arounds, Lamar Jackson running it himself. They've got a nice stable of running backs there, and I just thought it was going to be a long day. The defense is going to be knackered, and the Ravens are just going to run all over us.
But I thought
it didn't happen.
I thought they did really, really well on the whole. They did tighten up considerably. Obviously, we've lost DJ Reader, which is a huge blow because he's been as advertised and worth every penny, I think. And the exciting thing is that we were going to see him next to Geno Atkins, which you've been waiting for sort of 4 games, and that's not going to happen this season, unfortunately. But I've been impressed with Christian Covington, been impressed with Armani Bledsoe, I've been impressed with Khalil McKenzie yesterday. Our old friend Khalid Kareem flashed yesterday, which is great to see. The defense was doing a really, really good job on the whole, and I think you can see the difference of having a solid core in the middle of the field. Pratt, Bynes, ADG, Logan Wilson, Jordan Evans, those sort of guys in there make all the difference. So props to the defense.
Yeah, I completely agree. They played well yesterday. If you looked at that stat line before the game and said, this is what's going to happen, you'd be like, we're bloody going to win this. And Joe Burrow rushed for 10 yards yesterday, outrushed Lamar Jackson. Outrageous. Yeah. Lamar Jackson didn't have a huge day passing, but he just did enough. And Mark Ingram was fairly quiet, only ran 11 times, like you said. They did a good job. And there was times where I felt the Ravens were going to put the game out of hand and it was going to be 30-40 or something silly. And they did tighten up and they played well. You have to give credit. They got some pressure on him. They hit him a few times. They let him know they were there. They did play well. They took some of their chances as well. There's a couple of interceptions. There should have been, like Wilson, another one that I think he definitely want back. Davis Baker as well. And they're the chances you got to take. If you're going to have an opportunity against a team that, well, your offense isn't playing, it's brutal, but you've got to catch them and turn them into points. But full credit. And I think credit to Lou, he gets a lot of flack, the geezer, but he did call a good game, and you hold the Ravens to 20 points on offense at least, exclude the turnover. You fancy it, you take it every day. You go into Baltimore and you say, look, they're gonna score 20. You say, absolutely take that. We've got 3 touchdowns to win it here. You back yourself to have a go. Just to touch on that, I don't know whether it's on the wheel or not. That DJ Reader injury is devastating because Bengals don't sign big name free agents typically. It's a big signing for him, a well-renowned quality player on the defensive line, which we desperately need. He's played well. It's really hard. He went down earlier in the season, and I was like, oh my word, not DJ Reed, anything but him. And I think he just had cramp, and he came back in, and he was fine. And you think, thank God for that. And yesterday, I was begging it was cramp. I'm not Tony Romo, but I was begging it was just cramp with Reader. And obviously, it looks like a quad injury, and he's going to be out for the season. But just a real sad state of affairs. some free agents with Trey Waynes, and obviously he's out for a long time. Reader as well, and it just the Bengals, they don't get much luck with these free agents they bring in, do they? But
they don't, and I think it is luck.
Atkins
It's nothing to do. It's nothing to do with a curse or anything daft.
No, I completely agree. It's just bad luck.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, okay, let's spin the wheel again. Sure. I must mention Carlos Dunlap, who pulled off the only sack for the Bengals of the day, I think. Even though we did get some good pressure on Jackson, certainly in the second half. He was being sort of held by a guy in the grasp of someone else who was rushing, and he just sort of poked out his right hand, I think it was, grabbed Lamar Jackson's shirt, and just somehow dragged him to the ground. I couldn't believe it.
Like a choke slam.
Exactly. I don't know what that is, but it was...
You don't know what a choke slam is.
I do not know what a choke slam is. You know,
you actually do. You're a man that knows the fine art of a suplex. You obviously know what a choke slam is.
I do not. Anyway, let's go back to the wheel.
Man,
Sorry, it's that little perky, cheeky bit at the end, isn't it, that's doing it for you. Okay, it's Joe Burrow.
He had a rookie day, didn't he? He's allowed those days. He was poor. He knows it. There was the poor interception at the start. The problem with Burrow is he's running so much, and I saw this with Andy Dalton. At a certain point, you start seeing ghosts. You start not being able to sort of confidently stand in the pocket because you know you're going to get hit. And the issue for him yesterday is he was just getting run at by geezers that weren't even blocked.
Yeah,
it was like these cornerbacks just running off the edge. People come up the middle, and there's just no one on him. I mean, no one in the NFL can play like that. It doesn't matter who you put back there. If you've got some big geezer or fast geezer coming off the edge with no one blocking them, and you're having to spin, you're having to run away, you can't throw like that. It messes the play up. You've got to go off script. No one's going to play well like that. And at LSU, the guy's not as athletic that he's playing against. He can spin around. He can throw these balls downfield. He can create these marvellous plays. And he's had a bit of success so far doing that for us. But he learned his lesson yesterday. 7 sacks. He fumbled the ball a couple of times. He held on to it for too long. It just wasn't a good game. He couldn't hit those deep balls again. There was nothing long to speak of yesterday. Just a rough game. And he's played very, very, very well in the first 4. Been absolutely faultless at times. But yesterday had a rough game, and he'll know that.
Yeah, well, he tweeted, I think, as something as such, really, saying that they've got to use games like this to learn from and bounce back, which is exactly the right attitude. I agree, and this was my only worry about Burrow, that all that dancing around that we saw at college level, kind of extending plays, is great, and we've not really had a QB like that at the Bengals for a while, for a long time, arguably ever. So that's great. He offers a different dimension to anything that we've had before. And my only worry is that he was dancing around a lot at LSU, and people were going nuts. Oh, you see this play? He made 19 players miss. And it's like, yeah, great. It looks great and it's fun to watch. But wait till... And I said this last year. I said it on this podcast. Wait till he gets to the NFL. Players are bigger, quicker, faster, stronger. And he's not...
That's what Johnny Manziel used to do. Exactly that. And I'm not comparing Joe Burrow to Johnny Manziel in any way, shape or form. Joe Burrow's a lot better than that. But Manziel did the same at Texas A&M. And I used to watch it and I was like, he's not going to get away with this. He's just tossing balls all over the shop, the geezer. And he's using his athleticism. And it's not going to translate. I mean, Burrow's got a lot more than that. He's a much better passer of the ball. He's much more accurate.
Yeah.
We don't need to state that. But I don't know exactly what you mean.
Apparently 3 of the sacks were on him yesterday. That's what PFF said, I believe. So, it is one of those days. I hope that he's not, the running around and scrambling around isn't affecting his accuracy, which is what happened yesterday. There was a short pass to Mixon in the second half that, 99 times out of 100 he would make with his eyes closed, but he overthrew him, which was a shock. The interception.
You'd have made that one with the Heath son, wouldn't you?
I reckon just about, I think.
You'd
But,
have zipped it in there, mix it in the chest.
My point is that, of course I would, easily. But anyway, my point is that I hope all that kind of pressure didn't get to him in terms of his accuracy or whatever. Maybe it did. Could be a worry going forward. But you're right, he's a rookie. He's learning. He's got to learn to balance that. He's got, they've got to come up with ways for him to get the ball out of his hands quickly. They've got to get the running game going again, which was again more or less non-existent yesterday. So yeah, I mean, he'll learn. He's been absolutely brilliant in the first 4 games. He's got another tough one, another tough defense next week against the Colts. So, it's still fun to watch, but yesterday was tough, I think, for him.
Agreed.
Right, back to the wheel for our final category. You'll be very pleased to know. Farewell, jaunty digital theme until the next time. We're definitely bringing that back, I think. That was quite fun. Oh, that was a strange noise from your microphone. Right. It is the offensive line. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it feels like we're talking about them every single week and it gets a bit depressing. The PFF Graves? That's a bit of a Freudian slip, isn't it, for the offensive line? The PFF Bengals grades. Pass blocking. Hopkins, 90? No, that's not right. What is wrong with me? I'm going to pot here. Hopkins, 79.6. Hart, 79.0. Williams, 76.2. Redmond, 46.5. Jordan, 42.3, and the run blocking, conversely, Hopkins 55.5, Hart 55.5, Williams 51.6, Redmond 71.8, and Jordan 59.3. So according to PFF, Hopkins, Hart, and Williams were pretty solid in pass protection. Redmond and Jordan were not, and this is what's worrying me. It's the interior offensive line. Those guard positions are just not doing it at the moment. The run blocking grades seem to bear out as well. No running lanes for anybody to kind of run through. And we should also say, if an opposition is blitzing from the corner or the slot, it's not necessarily the offensive line's fault on the sacks, right? Because it's not an offensive line's assignment to pick up a free runner from the edge. You've got to think about tight ends. You've got to be thinking about running backs and picking those guys up. But so it might not all be on the offensive line. But yeah, it was kind of another horror show, really. Just couldn't get anything going on the ground. Just couldn't get anything going on. Too much on pass protection. Receivers weren't getting open. It was a pretty tough watch on the offensive side of the ball. I still don't know. It's kind of back to the drawing board again, like it was against the Philadelphia game. Everyone's screaming for changes. Fire this guy. Fire that guy. Bench that guy. Bench the other guy. I don't know what the answer is because there's just not the depth there to make any serious changes. I don't know if they can make any amazing scheme changes like they did halfway through last year. I personally would let Jim Turner go during the bye week. That's one casualty I think is merited. I don't know. It's tricky. But the one thing's for certain, you cannot keep doing this to a rookie quarterback. You just can't ruin a generational talent like this because of the offensive line. Because again, I said it once, say it again, everything starts and ends with the offensive line when it comes to the offense. It's running game, passing game, play action, confidence, synchronicity across the board. They just don't look as though they have it.
No, I agree. you make a good point about the fact that, is it scheme? Is it, there was a play yesterday, Drew Sample on Matt Judon, obviously a massive mismatch, big guy like Judon, running free, sacking Burrow. That's not going on the offensive line. The corners, as we said before, 4 or 5 of them getting sacks. Again, who's that on? Is it on the tight end? Is it on Burrow himself? Is it on a running back? Is it on Mixon or Gio? Like, they're the things you've got to iron out. And I think those PFF grades, I was looking at them for this season, sort of the grades of some of the guys, similar to what you said. And you look at it, and every Bengals fan out there wants to get rid of Bobby Hart. They want to get rid of Jim Turner. They want to get rid of some of the other guys. And you look at the grades, and Bobby Hart's got like a light green grade.
Yeah.
Something in the 60s, like top 60s. And you look at that at the start of the season, you're like, the Bengals were half decent, but you've got Joe Boyer going down 22 times. Something's wrong. And I, as much as I respect PFF, I love stats and I respect the work they do. It's a great platform. You're looking at it and you're like, well, what is wrong then? Because Burrow's highly rated. He's had some good games. And Joe Mixon, his PFF grade's fairly okay. I know that'll only encompass a small amount of it on blocking. But something's not going right. And if it's Callahan's offensive scheme, if it's play design, I don't know. But you just cannot have Joe Burrow getting sacked 22 times through 5 games. One game he gets sacked 8 times. One game he gets sacked 7 times. He is just getting hammered out there, and he's not just taking some sacks where he's giving himself up and it looks, he's just having these people touch him on the ground. He's getting walloped, the geezer. He's getting absolutely hammered. There'd be a lot of other players out there that have been longer in the teeth, like Ryan Fitzpatrick's of the world, Tom Brady's, Phillip Rivers. If they got hit, like Joe Burrow got hit, they'd be out. They'd be done. They'd be carted off the field. And you see with Dak Prescott yesterday, with that horrendous injury where he's on the run and he's taking the hit, it doesn't take a lot. You saw it with Carson Palmer, these awful injuries that can really hamper quarterbacks. And you cannot let Joe Burrow get hit like that. Like I said, they're big hits, and we've got to protect him better, make him feel confident in the pocket. Dalton lost it at the end. He was just running all over the place. He had no confidence in the line. He was getting hit. He got hurt a couple of times, and we cannot let that happen to Joe Burrow. So be it scheme, be it just better play, whatever it needs to be, something needs to change. And on the running side of the ball, Mixon had a fantastic game last week against the Jags. No sort of holes for him. He took advantage of it. But something's got to change again, whether it's scheme, whether it's the line blocking better, whether it's Mixon running harder, because we've got to establish that run. It will make the whole thing a lot easier for Joe
100%.
Burrow if he's got a run game that's putting up 70, 80 yards a game.
You saw the benefits last week because,
Yeah, 100%.
Zach could bring in his beloved play action, and that makes such a difference. Suddenly, Burrow's got more time to throw. That makes a huge difference with Burrow's accuracy, Joe Mixon is currently the 4th. He's 4th in the most yards table in the NFL. So there you go, which is weird. He's
also rushed it the second most times, and he's averaging 3.7 yards or 3.6 yards a carry, which is not great. I just think Gio needs to be given some carries and just mix it up a little bit, sort of try and diversify.
But I guess yesterday, if you're 17-0 down, then that also gives the opposition license to tee off. They've got a 17-point cushion. It's like, let's just blitz them on every play, which they kind of did. Anyway.
Just very quickly, Sam, just quickly to finish on the subject of the offensive line, I like to sort of give you these little questions. What do you do? What are you doing?
I don't know is the short answer. I mean, there's talk about, I saw some chatter on the Twitter today saying, why not move Bobby inside to right guard and give Adeniji a go? I don't know. I just do not know because we don't have the personnel really to, or do we? Maybe Adeniji is the answer, but he's like, what is he, 6th, 7th round rookie? Fred, do you just move Fred Johnson out to right tackle because this is kind of tackle is his natural position? I don't know. I don't know. Just get rid of Jim Turner.
If Jim Turner's gone, we're not having you in to replace him then. I just want to make that clear.
Who knows? Who the hell knows? Right, let's play 1st and 10. Okay, we are ready for another, what we call it, episode within an episode of First and 10. This week we have Christopher Hood in Cardiff, I believe. Christopher, how you doing?
Not so bad. It's typical Welsh weather here today. We've got rain, so all the lovely sunshine of lockdowns is a long distant memory now.
Welcome to you. It's good to have you on the podcast again. You might have heard Chris's voice before a few times in the past, but he's elected to walk the walk and talk the talk and all that kind of stuff. So, Chris, it's you know the rules. You have to move 80 yards with in 12 questions to score a touchdown. Now, the leader in the clubhouse, we're not going to count Paul Sinha because he's a professional and he only took 2 questions to score a touchdown. But you've got to beat Danny Hawkins with 6 questions. Marissa Contepelli, of course, scored a touchdown in 9 questions, as did Duncan Price. So, Chris, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready, and I'm pleased that you haven't added an extra round of realism where if I mess up a question completely, I get sacked and go back 7 yards.
No, this is not the real thing. This doesn't mirror the Bengals team itself. Thank goodness. Right, what are you going to start with? You're at your own 20-yard line, and it's 1st and 10.
Well, I'm going to take a leaf partly out of Paul Sinner's book and partly out of one of my favourite plays I've ever saw at Wembley when we had the international games with Phil Rivers, and just go for it on the first play. Going for the hard. Okay,
hard question. This is it. Is it going to be our first ever 1-question touchdown? Let's see. What is the chemical symbol for silver?
I think that is AG.
Correct! It's a touchdown! Burrow goes back to throw. AJ is chuntering on the sideline, but he comes in for the play. He catches it down the sideline, and it's an 80-yard touchdown. Christopher Hood, you are our first 1-question touchdown scorer in 1st and 10. Correct.
Thank you very much. I feel honoured. And following on from Paul's last time around, I feel as though you should now ask me about another 36 questions, because I know you have absolutely nothing else to do with your life, that all you want to do is search for questions.
No, Chris, because Paul Sinha completely and utterly cleaned me out of questions.
I
bet. Now, okay, well, let's ask you one more hard question to see if you got that. Because I reckon you would have... Actually, what would you have got if you hadn't have got that question right? What would you have done next? Would you have played it a bit safer?
I would have probably then gone for a safer one just to steady the nerves a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so let's give you a medium question. How many of Henry VIII's wives were called Catherine?
2.
See, you wouldn't have got that right. It's 3, Catherine.
Oh, I see.
That would have been 3rd down and 10. 3rd down and 10. So you would have had to gone for another medium question to get 1st down, right?
I could have done 2 easies, couldn't I?
Well, yes, I suppose so. Yeah.
I would probably really sort of taken it very easy at that point and gone for 2 easies and hope that I didn't totally embarrass myself.
First easy question. You will get this. Which football team has the nickname the Blades?
Yes, I will definitely get that, given that I support them, Sheffield United.
And then the next question would have been, what temperature in centigrade does water boil at?
100.
So you would have got the 1st down, but you would have been 4 questions in. But that doesn't matter, Chris, because you are our first, who knows, you might be our only 1-question touchdown scorer. Congratulations, Chris, and it's always good to catch up with you, mate. And
absolutely, good to chat to you too.
We wish you well, and stay safe down there in Wales.
Thanks very much. You stay safe too.
There we go. That was 1st and 10. What a fantastic little episode, little interlude. Forgive my excitement when Chris got the touchdown in 1 question, our first ever 1-question touchdown. See, that's something to celebrate, Nathan, isn't it?
Mate, you got to beef these questions up, my son. You got to come at us next year with some proper mad questions, so like some ridiculous South American literature questions, and just to completely throw people off. Like, come back next year, like first and 50, you rename it.
All right. Well, challenge accepted. As you can imagine, we have a lot of correspondence, so I'm going to go through as many as I can, and. Doesn't make for pretty reading.
I was looking at the questions earlier today.
They're not really questions. They're not questions.
No,
they're just
people have just decided they've gone full. Like, instead of one tweet now, most of them need 2 or 3 tweets. To get all that. I can feel the pain.
Okay, let's start. Let's get through this as painlessly as possible. Dreams. Remember, folks, it's just a game. It is just a game. I'll probably get shot down for that as well. Dreams of Witness at D Witness. Question for the pod. How can we possibly excuse that performance? The Ravens blitzed Mahomes all game, so tape was out there, yet we couldn't repel an unwanted door-to-door insurance salesman.
Love that.
Enough of the smooth ZT talk. Action is required. I think we spoke about that a little bit earlier, Jim, but well stated there.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Martin Calladine at Ugly Game. Losing the game wasn't the issue, it's losing in the manner we did that's troubling. We can all see what the problems are, but Zach Taylor has no answers. With his staff, Joe Burrow is more likely to get killed in a Bengals jersey than he is to win the Super Bowl in one. Duncan Uden at Slam Dunk the Funk.
Solid handle.
Good luck, guys, you'll need it. And this is when I said out, put out a tweet saying we want the questions, we're ready for it, and then kind of a little gif of some cartoon character hiding in a basket. So he says, good luck guys, you'll need it. I don't mind us losing, but it's the way we lost that makes it most disappointing. I'm sure you will have covered off the O-line's woes, AJ Green and John Ross. The only positive from last night is how well the defense played. Well said, Duncan. Wee Man Syndrome at Orr at Cameron. It was excruciating to watch. D kept the score respectable and actually played well for stretches. Seems like we have some players to get excited about on that side of the ball, with Logan Wilson looking like a solid pick so far. We'll miss Reader if he's out for the season. Peter Dazwa at Dadders. We always knew we were on a long road. There will always be potholes on that road. Admittedly, yesterday's was the size of the freaking Grand Canyon, but we're still on the road. There was some optimism in Bengaldom before yesterday. Don't let one bad loss destroy it. I think that's a fair point as well. I think that's fair, Pete. Sean Whitehead at Sean Whitehead _ defense was strong and made it hard for Lamar. The issue is if your O-line can't keep the QB upright to make throws, then doesn't matter how good Burrow is. Hard to make plays when someone is hitting you 2 seconds after the snap. Very fair point, Sean. Memphis Soul Stuart Bears 688 is Angry Nathan on tonight. If the O-line continues to be so poor, Burrow is going to get injured, and every team now has a template on how to beat us. How are you feeling? Are you angry?
No, I've played some tennis today. I've let my steam out. I was fuming last night. I think after the last 2.5 years, when you see your team get done over like that a few times, it's hard. You're frustrated. It's annoying, man. But I'm all good tonight, son. I've had my Magnum, as you said. I played some tennis. I've had a cheeky bottle of beer. I'm feeling all right.
Do you realise, I don't think we've had a winning season since 2015. Dare I say it, this has a small whiff of the 1990s about it. Just going to put it out there.
Yeah, well, 5 years goes quickly, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Jamie at Trek White Beaster. I'm sure Glad Taylor, the failure, has got us the field goal at the end. Otherwise, people might think this was a really bad defeat. I'm sure that on a day when our defense largely stifled the Ravens' offense, the same damn issues on our offense reared their head. And this is one of the multiple subtweets. What did I always say about Alex Redmond? Walking penalty. Bobby Hart, rubbish. Play calling, unimaginative. Execution, abysmal. Poor errors at poor times, a team that is mentally not in gear and not motivated. And why should they be motivated? They know that Zach's positivity in the face of incompetence will let them off. The man talks about culture and talks about respect, but there's the grotesque chaos of him not having the spuds to tell Dunlap he's dropping him. There's the lack of accountability from his assistants. Did you know this is Jim Turney's longest tenured NFL job? 1 season and 5 weeks. This is what you get for letting nepotism cloud your judgment. The easy decision is to wait to the end of the season. The easy decision is to offer the coaches the respect they ill deserve. We need to make hard... I told you this is a long one. We need to make hard decisions.
This is a podcast in its own right.
I know. We need to make hard decisions. Hard decisions that Houston and Atlanta have taken. Enough is enough. Sack Zach. He's cack. And get rid of Tobin and Arumu and Turner and the rest of this absolute circus. Darren Simmons to take over until the end of the year. Rip the plaster off.
If someone's just tuned into the podcast midway through, they just think that's your opinion, son. They're not going to be happy, are they?
No, absolutely. Andrew Dockerell at Dockers77, 183 yards for Burrow, 59 yards for Mixon. That's some pretty aseptic offense. The way AJ gave up on the INT was embarrassing. Was never going to be a 1-year rebuild, but yesterday showed there's a long way to go to be a top 10 team. Is Von Bell the only free agent to not miss a game via injury? Do you know what? He might be. Because obviously Xavier Suafilo...
Thomas hasn't, is he?
No, that's very true. Yeah, Thomas, yeah. Jam at Baguette Disco. The most frustrating thing is that the defense played well, shooting ourselves in the foot on offense. There was another couple of pennies yesterday that didn't do us any favours. Andrew Dockerell's back. He said he hates to talk draft already, but he has to ask the question. If the season ended today, Bengals draft 12th. Rank these 3 needs. Offensive line, wide receiver, edge. Think we need a premium addition at each to be that top 10 team. And I agree. Especially if AJ and Ross goes next year, we need a speedy wide receiver. So, that's a fairly high pick. We desperately need some pass rush help on the defensive line. I would think about going edge or even a 3 technique in the first couple of 3 rounds. But I think you have to put offensive line, and you have to, you've got to go interior, actually, I think. Although tackles are more...
roster is, haven't you?
Hey?
You know the roster. How many picks you got in this draft?
Well, no, there's 3 picks there. Offensive line, wide receiver, edge. I think I'd go OL, edge, and wide receiver.
Yeah, fair. It's got to be O-line, isn't it? I mean, it all depends on who's there and where you're picking, but it has to be O-line. That's the most glaring need on the team. There's a lot of old guys, we talked about it earlier, that are going to go. I mean, AJ Green's not going to be in next year. I think Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, I'd be surprised if they're both on the roster next year. I don't know what the get-out-of-jail clauses are in their contract, but unfortunately, it's again, you've had guys that have been here a long time. They're fantastic players, but their time comes to an end, and this roster's going through a bit of a rebuilding, sort of youth revival, and people sort of coming into the side. And I think, unfortunately, their numbers might be up, which opens a lot of positions up. It's a lot of. Unfortunately, there's a lot of positions. There's not many position groups. Maybe safety, maybe linebacker, depending on how these guys come on as the season progresses. But there's not many positions on that team that you'd say are full at the moment and couldn't use a starter or 2.
Agree. Rosie at Rosie_May16. It was just sad to watch. Wasn't much positive to take from that game. Where do you guys think the biggest failings are coming from? From the games I've seen, it seems like coaching is our main issue and that we need to bring in some experience for the O-line. Agree wholeheartedly. I think we did get completely and utterly out-coached yesterday. Not, again, I'm leaving the defense out, but certainly the duel between Zach and Brian versus old Wink on the other side, there was only one winner, I think, wasn't there?
You know how much I rate John Harbaugh, and he did just, without even needing to do anything spectacular, just carved us apart with the game planning. I still, my jury for Zach is still open. I'm not writing him off yet, but to answer Rosie's question, I think you have to point to the coaching and the schemes, because it's easy to point the finger at the offensive line, and we all know they haven't been fantastic, but it does go beyond that. Whether it's the play calling, to me, just doesn't look fun. There's nothing exciting about it. You don't feel like they've really sort of like dialed up some game plan that has torn the Ravens apart. It just felt a bit benign and a bit slow and a bit sort of made up as we went along. And I think that's a real shame. And I think, it's really, really, for me, it has to be the coaching at the moment. There's talent on the team. There are individual players that are good players. T. Higgins is very good. Joe Burrow is very good. Obviously, DJ Reed is a fantastic player. Jonah Williams has looked fairly good so far. Joe Mixon is a talented running back. There's players there that can make plays, and I just don't think we're getting the most out of them.
Dave Cass at Come On Didier.
Solid handle.
I've just about calmed down after last night. The reality is that we were never likely to win this game, but the way we lost it was very concerning. Any half-decent defence is going to walk all over our O-line, so Zach and the coaches will have to change their approach. We need to get the ball out of Joe's hand quickly, and I mean really quickly. Perhaps some more adventurous plays involving our backs would also help. If not, Joe's going to go the same way as Zach, and we'll be back to square one. Well done to the D who kept the score down. Yeah, I agree, Dave. Where were the jet sweeps that were so successful yesterday? Why not try a few end arounds and reverses like proper teams do? There weren't that many screens. You know what I mean? There was no real sort of deception there. And the problem is, I think, the receivers just weren't getting open. And obviously, receivers need separation to get the ball out quickly, you know. So
that's a really good point with the receivers, because we're not talking about that, but you have to look at that as an issue, because if these guys aren't open, it means Burrow has to hold the ball, and it means that he gets sacked, and that you can't look at PFF for that. That's why you look at these unusual grades that some of the line are getting. It's actually it's not bad grades of what's going on. Who's he thrown it to? I mean, we've said about wide receiver speed almost every single week. Obviously, AJ did nothing again yesterday. John Ross is still inactive. T. Higgins has been fantastic. He's probably been, apart from Joe Burrow, the one real highlight of this year. I think he's made some fantastic catches. He's been able to get open, but he's not the fastest guy in the world. Neither is Tyler Boyd. He's a slot receiver. Obviously, same with Alex Erickson. We all know Alden Tate's not a quick guy. He's just a big guy, good hands. It is a real worry. It's a real worry, because you just don't have that one guy that can just completely tear it down the field. I don't think we've had a long completion of over 30 or 40 yards. I mean, apart from the pass to Gio where he ran it for the sort of 30 or 40, Burrow's not completed a deep ball yet, and that's got to be a concern after 5 games.
Donny at Ippy Don. It was disappointing because we all believed we could keep this game tight. A win was always going to be the long shot, but to not be competitive offensively was a big letdown. The Colts could have a field day with our O-line next week. Yeah, I mean, they've only got Justin Houston and DeForest Buckner. That's all. Oliver at Dragonics. Jim Turner out. That is all. Stuart Davis at Dutch Bath.
Solid handle.
Time for Jim Turner to fall on his sword, and if he's unwilling to do that, Taylor to remove his friend from the organisation. Some big, tough decisions need to be made, and it's time that, as head coach, Taylor takes some responsibility. Ken Davis at Ken Davis. What is the tradable combined value of AJ and John Ross? Clearly neither are going to make the kind of contribution we need. Would you trade them to bank some value, either in picks or trades, which could help the areas of more concern? I would in a heartbeat.
The value's the issue, isn't it? I mean, you're not going to get anything higher than a 5th round pick for either of them. You'd be lucky to get a 5th, I think. It's a sad state of play, man. I just don't know what more to say. I don't think you'd even get a 6th round pick for either. I mean, AJ's hurt. Why would a team want to give up that? Even if they were desperate at wide receiver, I think there are going to be some serious questions there. You're also not going to take AJ Green on because he's on the franchise tag, so you're paying him a serious amount of money for a guy that is out of contract at the end of the season and is getting paid far more than he's able to contribute. John Ross, again, is on his contract ends at the end of the season. You're not really going to want to take that on. Their value's virtually nothing, I would say. I'd be surprised if you could get anything more than a 6th round pick for either of them at the moment. And that's a remarkable thing to say for two guys with certainly a lot of talent.
All at Armaduke Panache.
Solid handle.
What a disappointing state of events. Burrow looked every inch of a rookie deer in the headlights, and it was a massive coaching mismatch. We have sadly got the worst coaching staff in the division by a long stretch. Best thing was the 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. online tailgate. Lovely, Ol. Keeping it on brand there. Like it. Thank you very much.
You paid Ol for that, didn't you?
I slipped him a $5 last night. When are you going to come on the tailgate?
Well, soon, son. Soon, okay, just building up.
Yeah. Odat at DZE. Don't worry, we're almost done, I think. He's got, this is a triple tweeter, so bear with. One, our win-loss record shouldn't be the only measure. Just look at the 4-1 Bears, but if this year was meant to be about development and progress, then it's failing. None of the wide receivers are getting separation for Joe. Where is the innovation or creativity? Number 2, that was one of the worst displays by our offense, and there's been a lot of them in the last few years. I don't think Zach is up to it, and the front office should be thinking now about replacements in the off-season. Number 3, however, I do think the team will give Zach another year, because he's Duke Tobin's guy. And if you're the Duke and say Zach's not the guy now, you're also admitting your own failure, especially when you add in all the poor draft classes he's had recently.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I put out a poll yesterday, and I might do one every week just to sort of gauge the mood of the fan base as each week goes on. Should Zach Taylor stay? Should he go? Or should he be given more time? And at the moment, I think it was 60% of people wanted him out, and I think about 40 were saying either give him more time or he should stay, definitely. And I think it's interesting. Start of the season, you'd have probably said it was maybe 30, 20% maximum, maybe not even 20%. I think people, apart from Jamie, I think a lot of people were saying, look, he's difficult season last year. He's got his young guy now. He's got Joe Burrow. Let's see what he's got. I think all of us would have been in that camp. And 5 games in, I mean, it's not a complete shit show. I mean, they've won a game. They've got a tie out of the Eagles on the road, which is not awful, but it's just the manner in which I think they're playing in some of these games that's really angering people. And like we said every week, it's Zach Taylor. He will not be fired before the end of the season. I don't care if they don't win another game. They will not fire him before the end of the season. They'll wait and see what they've got. They'll wait to see what the progress is like, how he can develop Joe Burrow, how he can develop his guys that he's drafted and brought in. He's got 2 draft classes under his belt now. And then they'll make their decision. But I think at the moment he's not going to be happy as to where he is, and he's got some big games. There's some difficult games coming up as well. I think we've got the Colts, we've got the Steelers, we've got the Browns again. There's some good teams we've got to play.
Phil Hatton at Bengal Blue Boy, has AJ Green been having us off for 3 years? 55 million received for what? If he is carrying a knock, why was he trying to get a 4 to 5 year deal and saying he's as good as ever? Their effort on that interception, red-faced emoji. Yeah, I don't know. Again,
it's not bad earnings, is it? 55 tickets for for 3 years.
Warrior at Warrior Nate 99.
Solid handle.
Zach gets 2 more meaningless wins at the end of the season. Do either of you want him to keep his job? Everyone knew the Ravens would man blitz. How can't the guy have a game plan? Do Dave Schuler's kids have any coaching credentials? We have no chance of landing EB next year. I guess he's referring to Eric Bieniemy. Yeah. Sam,
what are you saying? What are you saying to the question there, son? If he wins 2 more meaningless games before the end of the season, what are you saying?
You're gonna have a discussion, aren't you? Really, let's face it. I mean, you really do. Depends. Again, if they show improvement and progress in terms of performance, then that might influence the decision. But if you're still kind of playing well, in patches, one good game against average opposition, and then one. I tell you what game I'm really fearing is the Steelers in a couple of weeks, but we'll talk about that at some other point. Sam Ainger at Sam_Ainger. I don't have a lot to say. It's incredibly frustrating to see the same old Bengals O-line problem, which has pretty much become the identity for the franchise now. I've always stayed patient, but I might lose it if we see Burrow on a cart. On to Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Fair point, Sam. And I think you'll be pleased to know that that's it. Thank you for all your correspondence.
Quick preview to the Colts game, my son.
Okay. Well, here we go. Bengals plays DJ Reader on IR and sign DT Xavier Williams. There we go. That's that. I think we've got a chance in that. I don't think the Colts are fantastic, but they do have a really good defense. So we better have something planned, or else it's going to be a long afternoon again. But I think we can get at Rivers, and we can hold that offense of theirs. I don't think that offense is amazing.
No, I completely agree. Rivers' arm looks like it's shot. It looks like I think his arm has been going for the last couple of years. They lost Marlon Mack, didn't they? It's going to be, I would imagine, potentially a low-scoring game. It's on the road as well, which makes it difficult. I mean, not a long trip up to Indianapolis for the Bengals, but got to win. I mean, as we say every week, it's a big game. We've got to win. I think a loss here in our season really starts to sort of drift away from us. But if we could get a win under our belt, 2-3-1 doesn't look too bad again. So let's see.
Indeed, let us see, shall we? Let's see together. We'll be back next week for another roundup, and hopefully I've got someone in the pipeline, so that should be exciting. Not literally. I don't have a human in a pipeline somewhere, but there is a guest in the pipeline, so do stay tuned for that. We'll be back with our online tailgate on Sunday, 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 British Standard Time, 11:30 Eastern, so do tune into that. We had a fantastic guest for that as well. We had Kendall Calhoun, the ex-Cincinnati Bearcat offensive lineman. He joined us, so you never know who you're going to get, and you're, of course, all welcome to come on and say hello. So do join us for our online tailgate. Me and Nathan will be back next week for another podcast. So until then, stay safe, be good, and it's a hoo-day from me.
And a hoo-day from me. Cheers, guys.
And it should also be noted that the views and opinions expressed within this podcast do not reflect those of the Cincinnati Bengals organisation.